Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talking with Debi and Friends. I apologize for the delay. We had a little bit of a snafu on some technical things that we were working on, but we are here. So Talking with Debi and Friends is a companion piece to our weekly cook and chat show that we do right here in our kitchen on Sundays at 12 noon. I am Travis, and this is my lovely co-host, the host of the show, Debi Gutierrez.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here. We had some technical difficulties.
There we go. Try that again.
We had some technical difficulties.
There you go.
And bringing Danny on picture-wise, but we have him on audio, which is good, right?
Yeah, we have him on audio, and we definitely have some graphics to show tonight. I'm really excited about having Danny on tonight. And he's got a very impressive resume. I want to say that for those of you watching already, I see that there are people joining. We stream to Facebook and YouTube so that you guys can comment. We definitely want to encourage comments tonight because Danny has done a lot of very cool stuff, not least of which the movie that's in the title of this stream. So we want to make sure that you guys are commenting and interacting with him. While you can't see him, he can see us and he can see what we're putting on the screen tonight. So that being said, please comment.
Yeah.
And interact with us.
Please. So while people are joining, let's talk about what happened Sunday. Sunday was our Chopped Neighborhood Edition.
Yeah. That was pretty fun.
Yeah. No, Chopped Neighborhood Edition. And our good friends Joe and BG Casas sent us a basket. And so we were so excited. I was so nervous. I opened the basket on air and there was licorice, nacho cheese.
There was baby food, green beans, and yucca, and what?
And pig's feet. And so I was ready to cry. I was ready to throw up. Thank God I have such beautiful friends who are already Pinteresting what they could do with pig's feet. And they were so cute. Like, you can make a soup and you can do this and you can do that and start peeling the yucca. You can put that in the oven. And I was just a mess. And finally, my husband let me in on the fact that it was a punk basket. I got punked.
She was sweating so hard, you guys. But you know what was really cool is that we had a lot of friends that were telling us what we could do with it, and Debi's wheels were turning, and ultimately we ended up making a really beautiful meal of crusted chicken and
crusted pecan chicken. It was delicious.
Yeah.
And then pasta with butternut sauce and a spinach salad with strawberries and feta cheese.
It was pretty delicious.
So we did a pretty good job. We did a pretty good job. Tony said he was having so much fun watching you on Sunday. Tony
Pinizotto
was our guest last week, and we talked everything game show. And so that's where the idea came from. We're talking about game, we're talking about cooking, and then my friend BG in the comments said, let's do this.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, if you guys couldn't notice, we were very stressed. After
we were so stressed.
We just slept. Exhausted.
I don't think we even ate later on that day. We were just exhausted.
Yeah, it was pretty
Took a lot out of us. So
emotional. Hey, let's say hi to a few people because some cool people are coming in.
Yeah.
Of course, my dad, and my dad says about time. Hey, listen, we can't control what goes on with the interwebs and technology. What was going on was Danny could see us on one device. He couldn't see us on the other, but we could hear through that one. It was creating a loop. So we're just going to go old school. He's on the phone right now. We're going to do it that way, but he can see us right now. So Rhea and Joe and Richard. Hey, guys.
Hi, everybody.
Suzanne and my Uncle Joe.
Hi, everybody.
What's going on, Joe?
Oh, Pilar. Hi, Pilar. Mike Bilbrey. Great job Sunday. Mike, we couldn't have done it without you. When he said, put the salad to the side and start working on your chicken.
He kept doing that. I see a lot more people. There's a number on the top of the screen that shows how many people are there. And I know there's more people than what we have commenting. So please, you guys, comment, say hi, click that like button, share with your friends, let them know that you're watching, because we always appreciate new friends in our kitchen.
Yeah. So tonight we have a writer-director, Danny Wolf, who is not only an amazing director and writer, but he's someone that we can call friend. And we've known him for a number of years and are so proud of some of the things that he's done, everything he's done.
Yeah.
But some of the things that now the public knows about, like Time Warp, a docuseries, 3 in a row. They're great. Plug that one thing into the other thing, then it will work.
Yeah, my dad doesn't know. He's trying to help us get the technology.
Turn it on, turn it off.
Let's introduce.
Yeah.
Diana, BG, and Tom just joined. Hey, guys.
Oh, good. Hi. So those of you that might have watched it, I put it out there that Danny's newest documentary is trending number 2 on Hulu, and it's called Skin, A History of Nudity in the Movies. There it is. Look at that. From Midnight Cowboy to Showgirls to 50 Shades of Grey. And we're starting there with a pretty current title that people know, Midnight Cowboy. But I mean, it feels like seconds after film was invented,
yeah,
they started putting nudes
as soon as
up.
a man could figure out he could snap shots of a naked woman, that was when that was it.
So
yeah.
Danny Wolf is the director of Skin, A History of Nudity in the Movies, a 2020 release from Plausible Films. Also released that year, Wolf directed and co-produced the 3-part documentary series Time Warp, the greatest cult films of all time, a deep dive history of cult movies from their birth at midnight screenings through today. Wolf has served as director, executive producer, and showrunner for several television series since 1990, beginning with the directing and producing of Candid Camera specials on CBS for legendary television host Alan Funt. He produced and directed When Good Times Go Bad and the hugely successful Busted on the Job, caught on tape for Fox Television.
He's got some amazing stories
Those
on that.
stories, oh my gosh. During this time, he became known as the king of outrageous videos, appearing in over 20 times on Sally, Jesse, Raphael, Maury, and Jenny Jones. He also produced and directed several documentary and reality series, including VH1's Music Behind Bars and Fuse's Live Through This. He directed and produced all 4 seasons of Showtime's Family Business, TBS Minding the Store with Pauly Shore, MTV Miss Videos Locos with Paul Rodriguez, and Vidiots with SNL's Dean Edwards for TV1. Most recently, he was co-executive and producer and showrunner on Showtime's Gigolos. Other notable productions he has directed and produced include Busted and Disgusted for Fox Reality Channel, The Chelsea Handler Show for E1, Funniest Mom in America for Nick at Night, and Surviving Nugent for VH1. Without further ado, shall we bring on our friend?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, everybody, give a big hand to Danny Wolf. Woo!
Hey, Danny.
Thank you, Debbie and Trevor. You didn't have to read all of those.
Well, you know what? I looked at it and I was thinking, I hope she does, because, dude, when do you sleep? Seriously.
Yeah.
Not often, and it's funny. And amongst all those, I did 160 episodes of Roller Jam, which was an updated roller derby show on TV
right.
for a few years.
Is that the photo you sent me of the T-Birds? Is it this one? Can I show this one? Look.
It was that was a picture of me announcing. Usually when I announce the T-Birds or the Bay Bomber games, they usually come off the track and they hit me.
Dude, you're getting
thrown into me.
You're getting pummeled right here.
You know, we so miss having you on camera, but you have sent so many amazing pictures that we'll always be able to have something up to show our audience who's watching.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we have been rewatching. I know it's a hard assignment. Rewatching Skin.
The History of Nudity.
History of Nudity in
movies. So I've been seeing boobs all day, boobs and nether regions all day. Danny, did you edit that? I mean, did you just have to see naked people the entire, for weeks at a time?
Well, let me preface when I interviewed all the celebrities that are in it and who appeared nude in movies, both male and female, they all did their interviews with their clothes on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So interviewing, Malcolm McDowell and Sean Young and Eric Roberts, Meryl Hemingway. What we tried to do was something informative, educational, fun, entertaining, and fast-paced. This is not a boob fest by any means. That wasn't what we wanted to do because nobody would take it seriously. So we really... When we started this, I wanted to make sure this was, a interesting and fun sort of look back from 1887 to today, the Me Too movement, of the history of nudity in mainstream movies. There's no porn in this.
Oh, no.
And it's all the mainstream movies with nudity again. And it's, the first cut was about 6 hours, and painstakingly had to cut it to what it's at now, 2 hours and 10 minutes. And it moves fast.
It does.
I mean, you've seen it, and I actually even I've seen it a million times, rewatched it today to refresh myself for tonight.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to look back at it again and remember doing these interviews all over the United States. But it really is, no one's done, that was the amazing thing, is coming off doing Time Warp. I was approached to write and direct this, and one of the executive producers is Jim McBride, who's known as Mr. Skimp. And he said, Danny, no one's ever done a documentary on the history of nudity in movies. And I said, of course they have. Like, they've done documentaries on everything now. And he's like, this hasn't been done. So we jumped on it really quick before someone else did. Mm-hmm. And it was not hard getting a lot of these major celebrities to come on camera and talk about, these classic films where they appeared nude. And it was really to find out how it not only affected their personal lives, but how it affected their careers. And those were where a lot of the interesting stories came from.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking to so many different actors and actresses about how it affected their personal lives and their careers. And then, of course, the educational part comes in as we cover the MPAA and the rating system and the Haze Code and, the early 20s and 30s pre-code. So if you're a history of film buff, if you love the cinema, forget the nudity part of it. You learn a lot about movies.
And code.
And how movies have changed, and the production codes and the rating systems. And there's a lot of great people who were involved that taught firsthand, including it was a coup getting Joan Graves, who was just retiring. She's the head of the MPAA for many, many years. And I got to interview her at her office like a day or two before she retired.
Wow.
And just to learn about the rating system and how they come up with the ratings. They're not a censorship board. They're just, ratings are suggestions, really for parents. That's where it comes from. And a lot of the people on the MPA board are parents, fathers and mothers. And that was interesting to learn about. And the production code, I didn't know much about going into this project, but really from the 30s to the 50s, there was an ironclad Haze Code, these rules that you couldn't do so much in films. It was a production code, and there was no nudity for decades.
Right.
In films, unless you were like an outlaw director and put nudity in your movies, but then you weren't getting distribution.
Right.
Theaters weren't showing your films. So it's an interesting period of time. But boy, there was a lot of debauchery in the 20s and 30s before they enforced the code, which they enforced it in 34. Right. Boy, between 1930 and 34, the pre-code era, man, there was nudity all over the place with major celebrities.
So can I back up just a little bit, Danny, and just start from when film became film, and how long after did they start to shoot nudes? Because according to the documentary, weren't nudes okay if they were standing still, and there was no code at the time, right?
No, I mean, the first ever, 1887 was the first nudes, Edward Muybridge's Bodies in Motion. So as soon as film was invented, nudity was shot 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
And for theatrical reasons, the first early movies was a movie called Inspiration and Purity. And those were movies where, they were like tableau. You could stand almost as a figurine.
Right.
And that was the only nudity. It really wasn't any movement.
And
it really...
I mean, at this time, there's no code.
No code. Yeah, the code basically came in 1930, but really wasn't enforced till 34. So they called it the Haze Code. And that was Will Haze, who was the Postmaster General, was basically said, you're going to oversee every movie. And what is done in movies, from animation to trailers to the writing to what's shot. And they didn't really strictly enforce this code till 1934, and that's when a gentleman named Breen was brought in to kind of oversee this code. And Joseph Breen was law and order. He was judge and jury. So he decided what went into every film.
So what was going on between 1930 and 34? Anything goes?
That's when you had movies like The Scarlet Empress and Daughter of the Gods and Sign of the Cross with Claudette Colbert, who takes a milk bath.
It takes a milk, yeah. And what about Cecil B. DeMille? Didn't Cecil B. DeMille do something about the Bible that was just like had every debauchery you could think of in the Old Testament on film?
Yeah, that was he was one of the early kind of, him and then Howard Hughes were kind of the rule breakers. They didn't want to abide by it. But there was, some famous actresses, Audrey Munson and Annette Kellerman and Claudette Colbert and even Clara Bow. And these actresses were all doing it, and there was no issues. There was no problems. These movies were making a lot of money. Even big budget movies like A Sign of the Cross. Or The Scarlet Empress. So, and even a few years later, that's when Howard Hughes said, I'm going to do The Outlaw with Jane Russell.
Oh, yeah.
And screw your code.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of almost started like bootlegging movies. And again, that's when these outlaw filmmakers were making like nudie cutie movies and monster nudie movies. They were kind of getting around the code. But again, these films had a hard time getting into theaters.
They weren't getting the distribution. Right, yeah.
Sure, exactly.
Or the advertising
really
too.
Exactly. And all this really changed. The code sort of fell apart into the 50s. And really everything opened up in the 60s into, 1970 when you had Easy Rider come out and Midnight Cowboy. And that's when everything really opened up with the MPAA. Or an X-rated, there wasn't triple X. There was X-rated, like Midnight Express or Midnight Cowboy, was an X-rated movie and won Best Picture.
Why?
Right.
Why? What opened up?
Like a death sentence.
Well, hang on, Danny. Hang on. Let me ask you this. I want to ask you a couple questions, and you can answer them
Sure.
as we go. What establishes an X-rated? Wasn't Robert De Niro in an X-rated movie before
Actually,
Midnight Cowboy?
De Niro was in one of the first ever X-rated movies, and it was a film called Greetings. I believe it was 1969 or 68.
Can we
and
real quick, Danny? Can we establish what an X-rated is? Because for me, I'm thinking X-rated means pornography.
Yeah, it might be different now than it was back then.
So what does X-rated mean? It doesn't always mean pornography.
No, it was sexual content.
Oh, okay.
And the like a movie like Midnight Cowboy, because John Boyd played a male prostitute, so there were scenes with nudity and sex. Drive, He Said, which was a Jack Nicholson directed movie, had full frontal nudity of a guy running through the University of Oregon. That got an X rating because it was full frontal male nudity. So it took till triple X is what changed. X wasn't a death sentence. You got distribution with X ratings. It was just GPGRX. It really was until Deep Throat came out where they created triple X. That's when you got into pornography.
And at some point, X was replaced by NC-17?
Yes. Then it was, years later.
Okay.
So you didn't see an X. It was NC-17 or triple X. And again, triple X is when you started going, into the movies with pornography, Behind the Green Door, Devil and Miss Jones, the early, call hardcore, porn films. Those were triple X.
Well, what happened to filmmakers who decided to ignore the code and move on? Because
like Howard Hughes.
Yeah, wouldn't these movies be tantalizing and exciting? And you talk about in your documentary how the Catholics would get on Sunday, here's a list of movies you can't see. The next thing you know, they're all rushing out to see it. So something forbidden is pretty exciting. So did ignoring the code made their movies even more tantalizing?
Absolutely. It's when you tell someone they can't have something, the more they want it.
Right.
Just like when A Clockwork Orange came out, it was banned in England. that only made bootleg copies so popular. Everybody was seeing it and getting their hands on it. So, it's the old when you tell people no, something's forbidden. They only want to see it more. And the Catholics, and there was a strict moral code during this time. They had a lot of power, especially in the Midwest, but they were all going to see it.
Right.
So it's a guy like Howard Hughes has enough money and power to kind of go, F the code. I'll do what I want. And The Outlaw was a good example with Jane Russell, where he just started actually distributing himself and paying the movie theaters to run it.
Right, including the advertising where they basically advertise her breasts, right?
Yeah, the 2 reasons to see The Outlaw.
2 reasons to see The Outlaw.
On the one sheet was Jane Russell with her cleavage. And the tagline was, there are 2 reasons to see The Outlaw.
And was there an overall feeling that actors and actresses had during this period about appearing nude in films?
It was Marilyn Monroe, actually, in Something's Gotta Give, in the very early 60s, kind of broke that, was it 52 or 62, 62, that it was okay that an actor or actress can do nudity and it won't kill your career. And she was kind of the first one, and then Jane Mansfield immediately came in right after and did Promises. So when you have big names like a Monroe or a Jane Mansfield, and then of course Mamie Van Doren, when they're doing nudity, it kind of made it okay because it didn't kill their careers. It actually made them more popular.
Can we talk about
that? Opened the door to people. Yeah.
Go ahead. That opened the door.
No, and that opened the door to people you never thought would do, like Anne Margaret and Carnal Knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the bigger name actresses were like, you know what, it's okay to do it. It's not going to be a death sentence to my career. And maybe I won't get typecast. And it really didn't hurt anyone's career to do nudity during the 60s into the 70s. Was
it up to the actors themselves, or did they, in the 60s and 70s, did they have agents pushing for nudity?
They had agents, but, we didn't delve as much into that as it really started in the late 70s and early 80s, where young actresses and even some young actors would accept roles that contain nudity just because they wanted to work and they wanted to be established in Hollywood. And what happened is certain actresses, then they became typecast. That they were an actress that was willing to take their top off. So the only roles they were getting offered was nudity. We interviewed Diane Franklin from a movie called The Last American Virgin. A teen sex comedy in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. Very, very good movie. Because she took her top off in that movie, the next 3 roles she did, the only scripts she was getting offered was nudity. But then she didn't want to just be known as I'm the girl who takes my top off, and had to have a talk with her agent and said, I'm not taking scripts or offers anymore where there's nudity. I want to be taken serious. So there is sort of a fine line when an actress breaks in, or an actor, that maybe sometimes, like Shannon Elizabeth said, if she didn't do nudity in American Pie, she wouldn't have had a 3-picture deal with Miramax. So it really depends on the actor or actress and what they're comfortable doing. Mm-hmm. But it certainly really never hurt anyone's career to take your top off.
Well, what's interesting is you address that, in the interviews, it's addressed quite a bit throughout. It was surprising to me how much they talked about that. And even when you started doing press, how at that time, Me Too was really, there was a lot going on with Me Too. And the press about your movie was still very positive. And I think, there's a misconception that when you see a poster like this and you see, the big, nudity in movies, you definitely immediately go to, I'm going to see a lot of just arbitrary nudity, but you guys did it very, very carefully. I've got those. We can put it up too. Okay. But Debbie's looking at the reviews. But you guys paid real close attention and gave voice to these women that I think I certainly personally have never heard what they experienced. So it really is interesting to hear from them how they chose or how they felt they had to be nude in certain movies and how it affected their career and or their psyche after.
Yeah, those were, to me, I mean, I've been doing all the interviews. I always have sort of my set questions, the generic questions you're going to ask everybody. And I made sure to ask every actor and actress not only how the nudity affected their career, but how it affected their personal life. And for an actress like Erica Gavin, who starred in a movie in 1968 called Vixen for Russ Meyer, and she was a new actress. It was her first movie. And she went to the premiere in New York City and was horrified at seeing her big, naked body on the big screen and became anorexic and picked herself apart at the premiere by seeing herself on the screen and dropped to 76 pounds and nearly died, all because of how she saw herself on the big screen. So there were some personal stories that were really interesting to hear, and how it really did affect their lives.
Yeah. Well, you sent over a lot of photos, and a lot of them were portrait style. So I just kind of arbitrarily put them into a single frame. They have nothing to do with each other, but I would like to show a couple of photos. I'll start with this. We've got a couple photos. Can you tell us what we're looking at? Who these people are in these? I know.
Well, in figuring what movies I wanted to cover in this documentary, you got to cover horror and sci-fi, and you got to cover drama, and you got to cover European films, but comedy. There's been nudity in comedies, and to the left is Ken Davidian from Borat. And I'm like, why shouldn't he talk in our documentary? I mean, he did one of the most notorious nude scenes in maybe film history.
It was hilarious.
Cohen and Borat. And hearing his story on how they shot it, and he had no problem being nude as long as Sasha was nude.
Right.
The nude wrestling scene they do in the hotel room that, you know, spills out into the convention room. He's a great guy. The other picture you had up was Diane Franklin from Last American Virgin. And she's very thoughtful and had a lot of great insight in the documentary about how when she did nudity, she went from kind of being a girl to an actor, and the responsibility that comes along with it. And she was the one I was talking about, how the first 3 movies she did, I think the second one was Amityville 2, The Possession, where she was also naked. Yeah. How she had to tell her agent, that's it. We're not taking any more. I don't want to be known, as she said, as the actress that just takes her top off. And changed her career and became, you know, really successful.
Wow.
Did you talk to any actresses? Oh, first of all, we have a question. I don't want to move forward because we're getting some comments here. Did Mae West ever do any nude acting?
No, you know, we cover Mae West a little bit. Mae West was all innuendo. Everything about Mae West was innuendo. She was a caricature. So no, she actually, a lot of cleavage and a lot of innuendo, but no, we did not have any nudity of Mae West.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
No.
Oh, and sometimes that's even more powerful, the innuendo.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely. Leave it to the imagination.
Yeah. Who do we have here in this picture? I mean, I know, but tell our audience.
Yeah, on the left is Erica Gavin. That was the actress I mentioned that was in Vixen, who became anorexic. She also starred in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which is a great Russ Meyer cult classic. And the gentleman I'm with there is Bruce Davison. Bruce Davison is a character actor you'd recognize from, he starred in Willard. That's one of his more famous.
Yes.
He's going to be in the next season of Ozark. Bruce did a movie in '69, a Frank Perry movie called Last Summer, with John Boy Walton and Richard Thomas and Barbara Hershey. And at the end of the movie, there's a very famous rape scene. And he is full nude. And it's one of the very early full frontal male nudity scenes. And he talks about the experience, and it was very interesting to hear, you know, being one of the pioneers, if you will, as was Malcolm McDowell, of early male full frontal nudity.
Right.
And Bruce Davison basically did it as a very young actor, struggling to make it in the business, and accepted the role and knew there'd be nudity. But as he said, you know, when you're a young actor and you can work with a director like Frank Perry, you put your trust in them, and that it's done tastefully and artistically. And the movie was a huge success, and certainly didn't hurt his career.
Here's something that surprised me about that segment in Skin, the documentary. First of all, that John Boy Walton was nude in a film, because who knew that? I always thought he was apple pie and a glass of milk and, good night, Jim Bob.
Kind of like learning your teacher has a first name.
Right. And the second thing.
Pre-Waltons for sure.
Right. Absolutely. And the second thing, and maybe we can talk a little bit about this, is there was a rape scene. I mean, and one of the girls, it's 2 boys, 2 girls, and one of the girls is part of this rape in that she, is holding the other woman down. So how do you coordinate back then? How did they coordinate these scenes of rape or violence?
The other woman you're talking about, that's Barbara Hershey.
Barbara Hershey
was the brunette
in
that scene. And the other actress was Kathy, and I'm blanking on her last name, but she sort of disappeared from films after that movie. But, as Bruce Davis has said, it's very choreographed. You work it out almost like a dance scene. And every movement and every body part, it's all choreographed.
Who choreographs
very hard with the director, Frank Perry.
Okay.
And he said that's how you shoot a scene like that. And it's an interesting film because, rape wasn't really covered in the late 60s in films. It's something you didn't see. But, what we learn about this in Skin as well is there's certain scenes in nudity you need to tell the story or to extend the story or move it further. And, if it's intrinsic to the plot of the movie, it belongs in the movie.
Right.
And it's something not to sidetrack, but, you can't do a movie like Showgirls without nudity. And you can't do a movie like Boogie Nights without nudity. And you can't do a movie like Personal Best with Mariel Hemingway, who played a track star. A scene of the girls in the movie in the sauna naked isn't weird. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm. So
it is intrinsic to the story. Or when she played Dorothy Stratton in Star 80, if you're going to do a movie about a playmate, there's going to be nudity.
Mm-hmm.
And, these actors and actresses know that, but they don't have problems with it if it's not gratuitous or not exploitive. But if it carries the storyline and it's important to the plot, every actor and actress I talked to said, no problem doing it.
Right.
You didn't come across one that said, I thought it was gratuitous, or I didn't need to do that, or it gave me some setback in my career?
There was one. Christine DeBelle did a movie called Alice in Wonderland, which was a live action kind of musical that was done spoofing Alice in Wonderland. And there was some sex in the movie. Not hardcore, but the movie got an X rating because the director, Velasco, included certain scenes and angles she didn't know were being shot. She was young and naive. The movie became successful when there was an R-rated version that came out where they took away a couple of shots. So she kind of thought she was ambushed a bit by the director. And you do hear those stories of certain young actresses being taken, advantage of in certain ways. And there was a multitude of ways actors or actresses were coerced to do nudity. One example is the movie Valley Girl, directed by Martha Coolidge, a teen sex comedy. Nicolas Cage, exactly, and Deborah Foreman. And the distribution company was called Atlantic Releasing. And they told Martha Coolidge mid-shoot, they wanted 4 scenes of nudity. She had 3 in the script. She had to come up with another one or they weren't going to distribute the movie. So here's a director, a pretty acclaimed director. Where do I throw an extra nude scene in with an actor or actress who was not signed up to do it because it wasn't in the original script? And E.G. Daly is the actress. They added a scene in a bedroom, and she's topless. And we interview E.G. in this documentary, and she talks about how, she had to step out with Martha and figure out how to do it and do it tastefully and where it would be organic to the movie and not be something exploitive. And so that's why there was a 4th scene of nudity. So sometimes, and then the other thing that we heard a little bit was low-budget horror films nudity is very prevalent, especially back in the early 80s. And a lot of them were young actresses that didn't have much credit. And they might be on the set, and the director would say, we're going to throw in a scene with your top off. That wasn't in the script, and they didn't sign up for it. But they were pressured. And a director might have said, if you don't do it, you're going to ruin the movie. You're going to put us all out of work. We're not going to get distribution. Your career is going to be over. You're going to be deemed difficult. So there are those stories of some young actresses, especially in the early 80s, that were coerced into doing nudity kind of against their will and what they didn't sign up to do in the first place.
There's Sean Young tells a story on your documentary about during the audition process, she was asked to take her top off.
Yeah, and that's something we cover a little bit. You really should never have to do that. And Rena Riffle talked about having to do that for striptease. And yeah, Sean Young does say the director wanted her to lift her top up so he can see her breast to make sure she'd be okay for a nude scene, and she did it.
No scars or things, right?
Yeah.
But still.
And maybe that she was comfortable. But that's something extremely rare that, in an audition, you really should never have to do that.
Now, where did body doubles come in? If an actress or an actor isn't comfortable or doesn't like their backside or thinks they have a scar, what?
One of the first body doubles people don't realize was Psycho. Well, I'll go way back.
Oh, yeah, Psycho.
Sullivan and Tarzan and her mate. Maureen O'Sullivan had a body double, Annette Kellerman in the Tarzan and his mate film.
What year was that, Danny?
Psycho, pardon me?
What year was Tarzan and his mate?
Tarzan was in the 30s.
In the 30s. Right. Okay, go ahead.
So, Psycho, Janet Leigh wasn't comfortable doing nudity. So the way that's edited is obviously amazing, what Hitchcock was able to do. But none of the parts where you see any body is Janet Leigh. Really, the shots of her that you see of her or her face.
Now, getting back to Tarzan and his mate in the 30s, what was shocking in your documentary to me was that there was a scene of of Tarzan and his mate swimming completely naked underwater. And I thought the 30s, I didn't think that would be a go in the 30s. Families go to films, and
Tarzan seemed like a family.
As I said, a lot of debauchery in the 30s. There was a lot of scandal. That was the Hollywood Babylon. The 20s into the 30s was anything goes time, and a lot of freedom. And box office was huge then. So nudity wasn't frowned upon and wasn't taboo in the 20s into the 30s. Thus, which created the code.
And was it families that brought this to the attention of we need a code?
Well, a lot of that had to do with Catholics.
Yeah, religion.
And they called it the Legion of Decency. And, religion had a lot of power, and especially in the Midwest, to what was going on in Hollywood. And a lot of the code was based on what they called the moral legion of decency, where, doing something licentious or something, even a quick shot of nudity, you can't do that. That's terrible. The youth can't look at that. It's going to be corrupt America. And the code was basically brought by this, I guess you can say, religious side, religious front that that had a lot of power and wielded that power. But again, in time, that all fell apart. Right. Filmmakers just started saying, we're not sticking to this code.
Yeah. I'm gonna show another couple more photos because you've got a lot here. I love these photos.
Oh, these are beautiful.
This photo here is such a great shot. Yeah.
Yeah, the Big Lebowski. Jeff Bridges is a great guy. I know he's battling cancer right now, but a terrific guy from the Big Lebowski. And ironically, his co-star Julianne Moore has done as much nudity as any actress in Hollywood.
Naked all the time. I didn't realize that.
Shortcuts.
Yeah.
I did.
Oh, she did. If you look at the movie she did with Matthew Modine called Shortcuts, It's full frontal. You see her front. She wears a sweater and no underwear.
Just blow drying her top or something. Yeah.
Exactly. And Boogie Nights, of course, is her nudity's trouble. But, Kate Winslet's done a dozen movies with nudity.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of you don't sort of Kathleen Turner, Melanie Griffith, Teresa Russell. You can go on and on. That big name actresses and actors like Malcolm McDowell have done a lot of nudity. And again, hasn't hurt any of their careers.
Now, Danny, where do we go from nudity and nude scenes to actual touching, holding, taking clothes off, that kind of thing?
Well, do you have a reason why you're asking that? Because you and I had a conversation about that the other day where we were watching the Billie Holiday movie. And it's
also on Hulu.
Yeah, it's very, very close to, it looks real.
Yeah, it looks real. So how do they make these love scenes look so realistic?
I just think that's good acting and good camera work. I don't know the exact answer.
I thought the question was,
are they clothed?
When did they make the leap from just nudity together to what looks like they're actually on top of each other and having sex?
Do you know any of the parameters on that?
Yeah, Midnight Cowboy is one of the more known, where you're seeing John Voight in sex scenes, like with Sylvia Miles and Brenda Vaccaro. Those were real, sex scenes. And that really started when the MPA was brought in '69 with Jack Valente.
And
what does the MPA stand for? National Parent Association? National Picture. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, then you had the Malcolm McDowell and Caligula. That was a Penthouse production, which, how did that even get?
He never got naked. He never got naked in the whole film.
Caligula is an interesting story because it's such a notorious movie now. And Sir John Gielgud and Peter O'Toole and Helen Mirren. Malcolm McDowell. And it was produced by Bob Guccione, who was the creator and publisher of Penthouse. And he funded this movie called Caligula. And unfortunately, when he had many sets that were made. Tinto Brass directed this movie. And Bob Guccione, in the middle of the night, would bring porn actresses in to do sex scenes. Not that any of the actors knew this was going on. So Malcolm McDowell tells the story in this documentary when he went to the premiere or a screening with Mary Steenburgen, his then wife. He had no idea all the sex was thrown into the movie.
What a hell of a time to learn it.
Bob Guccione basically hijacked the movie, threw in a lot of porn that the actors didn't know about, and it became this notorious film. And Malcolm doesn't say too many nice things about Guccione in the doc, but I believe they're working on another version of it right now for release.
Yeah, really. Because that needs to be made. Hey, speaking of saying nice things, I want to put up on the screen some reviews that you got. Here's from The Hollywood Reporter. The title may sound incendiary, something left over from the Russ Meyer era, but Danny Wolf's Skin, A History of Nudity in the Movies turns out to be informative and even-handed as well as entertaining.
The Daily News, Skin, A History of Nudity in the Movies, delivers exactly what it says in the title. Skin traces the fascination of filmmakers and fans with nudity on screen from the earliest days of Hollywood to the present.
CNN, there's an abundance of worthwhile anecdotes strewn throughout, some upsetting, others simply amusing. What were they upset about, I wonder?
Well, there's some, I think overall, there was an openness and acceptance, but there were some actors who had a problem, like Last Tango in Paris has a pretty upsetting story, as does Linda Blair doing a scene with an older actor who John Vernon, who really beat the hell out of her. And, and then Last Tango was, That was
Last Tango is a very it's no one really knows. I mean, we cover that because it's a seminal film that had nudity with Maria Schneider and Marlon Brando, and the butter scene where he uses butter as a lubricant. And there's still rumors to this day. Maria Schneider said that all happened. She was raped by Marlon Brando in that scene without knowing. We had someone in the documentary say that's false. Maria Schneider and Marlon Brando were very close friends and remained friends up until her death. So it's one of those kind of urban legend. No one knows really the butter scene, if it was real or fake, and was she in on it or was she ambushed?
Maybe
and
just
really
for some publicity or something.
Could have been. I mean, it's when we put the movie together, the first thing I did was, what are the movies you can't leave out? What are those seminal movies you have to cover? And that was a no-brainer.
Right.
Last Tango's one you couldn't leave out.
Speaking of that, you had just come off of Time Warp, the 3-part series. That was obviously a massive undertaking. You had told us before about how you guys did basically the same thing. What movies could you possibly leave out of this? Because there were so many. But the title graphic up, there were 3 versions: Volume 1, Midnight Madness; Volume 2, Horror and Sci-Fi; Volume 3, Comedy and Camp. So when you approached both of these documentaries, how did you cut? I mean, how did you lay your storyboard so that you got to some of the best stuff? Because I didn't feel like I was missing anything while I was watching both the Skin and the Time Warp series. I felt like I was writing stuff down. Oh my God, I got to watch that movie, especially with the Time Warp stuff. How did you approach cutting and adding movies?
Well, for Time Warp, literally on a wall, I probably had 200 films that you could basically say were cult films. You can't do that many. So we basically ended up picking, I think it was 45 that, there's the obvious ones you can't leave out: Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Harold and Maude, and The Night of the Living Dead, and The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and This Is Spinal Tap. There's the obvious one. Then it was tough because then it was like, well, do we do this one or don't we? Some of the decision-making was, could we get someone from the film to interview? So I will say, Mommy Dearest is definitely a cult classic. It's not in the series because Faye Dunaway said no to an interview. The director passed away, and Diana Scarwood, who played Christina, was ill when we approached her for an interview. So I said, let's omit it. One other was Phantom of the Paradise. Great rock music movie with Paul Williams. We tried to reach Paul Williams numerous times, and Jessica Harper and Meatloaf. Couldn't get any of them. And the sad part is I felt terrible leaving Phantom of the Paradise out. And it's a Brian De Palma. He turned us down too. He was the director. Now jump here 2 years later, a friend of mine's doing a musical with Paul Williams right now. And his manager never told him that we wanted him for an interview. He said he would have done it.
Wow. So some of the decisions were made for you, obviously.
Some were made for us. Then, while we're doing this, it's interesting. I'm interviewing Rob Reiner for Spinal Tap. And he said, wow, I'm surprised you're not covering Princess Bride. You don't know how many people come up to me and approach me and know all the lines to the movie. And all I could say to him is, I can't do every movie.
Right.
At some point, I would have loved to have done Caddyshack or Slapshot or
Groundhog Day.
The Harder They Come, or a number of other films that are cult films, but you just can't do them all. I would have loved to have done Walking Tall or Billy Jack, and then go on and on with films that are considered cult films, but again, you can't do them all. And by the way, it's almost a 6-hour doc as it is. That's why it's parts.
Yeah. But you know what? We attended the screening and never got tired.
At the Limley.
Yeah.
Well, we missed the first one, but we stayed for the second two, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
I want to just put out there again, you guys that are hanging in with us in the comments, if you've got questions about cult movies or nudity in the movies, put them in the comment section there, because Danny can see the comments, and
he's a wealth of information. Danny, can you talk about intimacy coordinators? When did an intimacy coordinator become a profession and welcomed onto sets?
Are you doing research for our
Great
house?
Question. Great question, Debbie. So, in the age of the Me Too movement and all these lawsuits and chatter you've heard about, all these problems on the set where actors, were treated unfairly or coerced to do scenes or were pressured, the Me Too movement really brought out this new change, or this profession called an intimacy coordinator. And what this person is they go to the set. They hang on the set. They're on the set the whole time to make sure if there's scenes with nudity or sex that they're done correctly, artistically, that the actors and actresses are treated right, that it's like an insurance policy for the studio. So if no actor can say they were coerced to do something, and no director can say, the opposite. It's like having someone on the set supervising. And it pretty much started with the HBO series The Deuce that was on a couple of years ago, which had a lot of sex. And again, this was right in the middle of the Me Too tornado. So it really is, it's having someone on the set just to make sure if you're going to have scenes, let's say with nudity, that they're done correctly, with integrity, that no one is being mistreated, no one's being, ambushed. And I think it's great. And you're hearing about it all the time now. These intimacy coordinators or directors are on most sets now. Whenever there's a nudity, or when I say sex, not real sex, but even simulated for a film. So very important. And I think you'll see that job forever now.
I'm surprised that didn't come out sooner. You said just a few years ago.
Yeah, because if it's up to just the director, I would much rather have an intimacy coordinator coordinating the scene than just a director saying, now let's try this. Flip her over and let's do this one.
Yeah, there was so much where it was a he said, she said, where the director denies telling an actor to do something, and the actor saying, the director made me do something, or, coerced me or put the pressure on me to do it. So an intimacy director really blocks, as I said, it's an insurance policy really for the studios to have someone on the set making sure, we don't have problems.
Right.
And we interview one of the intimacy coordinators in Skin, Alicia Rodas, who's one of the first intimacy coordinators, and she said, this is here to stay. This is so there's no more problems on the set.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I heard an interview with an intimacy coordinator who talked about, modesty garments, to just make sure that everybody's modesty garment is in place before we start, and to make sure it stays in place while it's going on.
It's every step. You're correct. It's from how they're brought onto the set. If they have a robe and how they're covered up.
Close.
Right when the scene's over, they don't have to jump out of a bed naked. That someone is standing there with a robe or a towel, and they're safely brought back to their dressing room or to their wherever they're being held. So yeah, that came up as well. It's every bit of protection for the actor or actress.
Nice.
Danny, do you think there's a Skin 2?
Yes.
Is that a weird question?
So well, and I thank Hulu, because it's done so well on Hulu. It's still on Amazon Prime, and you can still see it on video on demand on your cable systems, and it's on Fandango and a lot of streamers. But it's done so phenomenally well, even worldwide, that the idea for Skin 2, instead of the history of nudity in the movies, Skin 2 will be the history of sex in the cinema.
Oh.
And that's where we'll get more into Europe, and going to Europe and interviewing, because you remember there's a lot more of this going on in Europe far before we saw it in American movies. So yeah, we're starting to just piece together and hopefully start soon a Skin 2 Sex in the Cinema.
How exciting, Danny.
We have a question from Mike Bilbrey. By the way, Mike Bilbrey, I don't know if you noticed, we're drinking out of our Bilbrey Farms. We're having some tea. Go ahead. Go ahead, baby.
Can actors or actresses bring their own intimacy coordinator, or does the movie maker choose? That's a good question.
That's a great question. Actually, I don't know that. I don't think they would be able to bring their own. I think that's hired by the studio. Just so there's no, I don't want to say them being biased,
but probably legal reasons.
Interested. Yeah, that's a good question. I would say probably not. I don't think an actor or actress can hire their own and bring them. I think that's provided by the studio.
I imagine there would be some choices, because sometimes when you go on a set, they'll say, here are 2 people that do hair. Here's some of their pictures of what they've done. You choose. And maybe with an intimacy coordinator, somebody wants a female on set, if she's female.
Absolutely.
And would feel more comfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say before production, that's probably in their writer. There's nudity writers.
Mm-hmm.
That actors and actresses have to sign, and I'm sure that is in the nudity writer. Are you more comfortable with a man or a woman?
Any other questions? Now's your time, folks. It's so funny because a lot of times, as if the interview is very, very interesting, there's no comments because everybody's listening.
Go ahead and read that one, Debbie.
But if Movie House chooses, seems like they would be biased to defend the maker. I hear what he's saying, because if Gutierrez says, we always have this guy, he's great.
Yeah, some slimy dude in the corner with greasy hair.
So I think that would be part of a production.
Yeah.
Part of the production. Like I said, even me just going on a set, they'll say, hey, we have this person that does makeup or this person that does hair. And as a woman, a Latina, sometimes you want to go with somebody that knows your hair or knows your skin tone. And the same thing with my friends who are Black actresses, so sometimes you get a choice of who you can bring in to help you. So I'm sure there's
exactly. And we cover a little bit, how many people stand around on the set when there's a scene with nudity. A good example is when Sybil Shepherd did The Last Picture Show. It was her first movie. She was a very young actress who, model turned actress. And the scene of her on the diving board in the pool, well, it's a scene with a whole bunch of actors that are all naked in the pool, including Randy Quaid. And Peter Bogdanovich, basically because he didn't want her to feel nervous doing her first scene with nudity and having to do it amongst all these actors in the pool, he cleared the set. And it was Peter, Sybil, and a cameraman. That was it. And she felt comfortable enough to do it because there was, not this big crowd of people gawking.
Mm-hmm.
So there are those stories, when I'm sure some actors and actresses get so into the role that they almost block out, who's there and who's watching. But there's, some that are probably young, like a Sybil Shepherd doing her first movie where she was very nervous and not having to do, her scene on the diving board in front of 60 people.
Right.
Where she would have just been, a nervous wreck and everyone staring at her.
Trying to find the photo. I think, yep, there he is on the left.
There he is. You want to talk about that photo?
Peter Bogdanovich is so interesting because I love old school Hollywood and there's not a lot left. And he is, to me, the essence of like old time Hollywood. And we interviewed him and had to be at the Beverly Hills Hotel of all places. And I go, God, of course. And I couldn't wait to meet him because I'm a fan of What's Up Doc and Paper Moon. I mean, he's done some really cool movies and he's a legend, but he's always known for having an ascot. He always was, you saw the pictures of Peter Bogdanovich with the ascot. But when he showed up, it wasn't an ascot. It was like a, what do they call that? Like a bandana.
Oh.
And that's what he's been sporting these days. But it was amazing to meet someone of his stature. The other picture is Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith is a great, great guy, but he did a movie called Zack and Miri Make a Porno.
Yeah.
Right.
And we talk about that comedy in our documentary because the title got them in a lot of hot water.
Right.
Where a lot of networks wouldn't even run the commercial because of the title. And they had to put stick figures in some of the one sheets that were out in front of theaters. So it was an interesting story. And we interviewed Tracy Lords, who's in that movie, ironically, doesn't do any nudity in Zack and Miri, but she's in the movie.
Wow.
And Kevin Smith is a great guy. We interviewed him for Time Warp for Clerks.
Oh, great movie.
Yeah.
Super good guy.
And Dogma and Mallrats, amongst other amazing director. I love his work.
And if you're a fan of Peter Bogdanovich, Danny, there's a podcast that I think you would really like called "You Must Remember This," and our listeners too, if you like old Hollywood. It's called "You Must Remember This," and the host will do a series of shows. And her latest one is about Polly Pratt, I believe, she was married to Peter Bogdanovich, and he left Polly for Sybil Shepherd. Right, during that movie, right after she jumped off the diving board, I bet. But she was still really, really influential in his movies, but she wasn't given credit.
Yeah,
so
she was.
If you have some driving time, you must remember this is an amazing podcast. Really, really good podcast.
But then I can't listen to the 70s on 7 while I'm driving.
Oh, that's funny. Oh my gosh. We got a comment here. I love Dogma. I thought it was funny that his friend, Kevin Smith's friend,
Jason Mewes
was who was in Dogma with him and Clerks, was in what's the name of the movie? Make a Porno.
Zack and Miri.
Zack and Miri make a porno. Yeah. And that he had shaved his pubic hair into a heart. And the only one that caught it was Ben Affleck.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, Kevin Smith did a little movie a few years back that was the most disturbing movie ever made.
Oh,
called Tusk, with Michael Parks and Justin Long, and a cameo by Johnny Depp. Most people didn't know the movie existed. It is, I think, one of the most disturbing films ever made.
Why?
It's just called Tusk.
Why? What's it about?
Not to ruin the movie, is Michael Parks is this sadistic guy that turns Justin Long into a walrus and basically tortures him and turns him into a walrus.
Okay.
To have this epic battle at the end. It is so sad and so creepy and so disturbing. I saw it at the ArcLight when it came out. And a very small movie, didn't do well, but it's just called Tusk, Tusk, and it is really hard to watch.
Oh, okay.
If you say that, then it's bad because you had to go through all those cult films, and there were some I could not watch. You just couldn't.
Like the Human Centipede.
Oh, God. Why did you have to say that, Danny?
She's going to have nightmares now, man.
Thanks a lot, Danny. So what are you working on?
Human Centipede's interesting.
Yeah, but disgusting.
Yeah, and that was an actress that took a part because she needed a part. She needed to pay rent.
Yeah.
Oof.
If you've seen The Human Centipede, there's 3 of them. It's a trilogy, and that really, the director and writer who made it is a gentleman named Tom Six from the Netherlands, and he's interviewed in Time Warp in our horror and sci-fi section. And Human Centipede is wild. What a premise.
Well, it sounds like Tusk, this movie that you're talking about, where
it's a little bit along those lines, but the greatest tagline for Human Centipede was 100% medically accurate, meaning you could really turn 3 people into a human centipede. And if you don't want to watch the movie, we cover it in Time Warp, and the premise, and we interview the director and the actress lead, but what a premise.
That's gross.
Yeah. So what are you working on now?
Well, besides really kind of pre-production on Skin 2, this just came up the other day. is, and you mentioned it earlier, is Peter Funt, Alan Funt's son, who took over Candid Camera in the 90s. I talked to for 2 hours today about a possible revamping and coming along to do a new Candid Camera. So that could be something I would be really interested in doing.
Look at you, full circle like that.
That would go real full circle. And Peter Funt was involved when I was doing Candid Camera. I did the last 6 CBS specials with Alan before he had his stroke. And Peter used to send segments. He would do some in the East Coast. He lived in Connecticut. And he's hysterical, really funny. So that just came up in the last few days. And of course, as Travis knows, always trying to bring back the roller derby.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're creating a new, hopefully nostalgic, and these are, when I say roller derby, I don't mean the all-girl leagues. I'm talking traditional co-ed, quad skates, bank track, LA T-Birds. I think it's time for it to come back. It's been 20 years.
I think so too. There's a lot of pent-up aggression in America right now. We need some.
And it's good, clean fun.
Hey, Danny, real quick, were you the one that told me that Alan Funt happened? For those of you that don't know, he was the host of the original Candid Camera. Were you the one that told me the story that there was a plane with problems? Like it was, there was a rumor of hijack or something?
No, yes.
Did you?
What? It's funny you say that because Peter had just put a documentary together that I don't think anyone's seen.
I don't know why I know this.
To see it. Yeah, and you're right. Alan was on a flight that was hijacked to Cuba. And the people on the plane knew Alan was on the flight, and they didn't believe it. They thought it was a Candid Camera.
Was it Tony last week that was talking about that?
I don't know. I think Tony's still watching the show. So if he's...
It might have been.
It might have been Tony from last week that told us that story.
How hilarious would that be if you look around and see him and you're like, yeah, we're not really getting hijacked. Oh, we're really getting hijacked. Holy shit, we're really hijacked.
He must have saved...
And the whole plane gave a standing ovation to the hijacker. When he came out of the cabin, everyone started applauding him.
Oh, my God.
He was an actor.
Oh my gosh. It was Tony. Another listener Joe Casas said it was Tony. Yes, talked last week. He probably saved a lot of lives by sparing people any kind of anxiety or making a rash decision or judgment on the plane.
Yeah.
That is funny. Oh, Danny, I'm so excited for you.
So before we wrap up and let you go, Danny, last week you told us we had to watch a movie. We watched it. We loved it. That was I Care a Lot.
Oh, it's good.
Oh, God, it was so good.
So good. You're right. The writing was phenomenal. I think everybody should have a friend like Danny who sends you movie suggestions. It's like a menu. Like you say, hey, I feel like eating Italian. What should I eat? And somebody sends you, like spaghetti with meatballs and great garlic bread. So if you tell Danny, ooh, I feel like being scared tonight. What should I watch?
So we want to ask what are you going to suggest for people to watch? But also I definitely want to hear your opinion of that movie, because for me, it was one of the most original scripts. My palms were sweaty the entire time. Debi kept looking away. She couldn't, it was just so.
It just didn't make sense. I'm like, it does, but at the end,
suspenseful.
The writing was perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah, the movie, I thought it was, Diane Wiest, first of all, should win Best Supporting Actress. Mm-hmm. She won't get nominated, but she should win. Peter Dinklage and Rosamund Pike. And it's directed and written by a guy named Jay Blakeford, who really hasn't done anything. A couple small movies, but this is, it's again, I Care a Lot. It's on, I think it's Netflix right now. Yep. And it is so well acted. The story is so original. The twists and if you haven't seen it, watch it tonight.
Riveting.
Watch it tonight.
You can't do anything while you're watching it. You have to be glued to the, you can't, be on the phone or doing Sudoku at the same time.
Try not to blink too long.
Yeah. Riveting. Yeah. Do you have any other suggestions for our audience?
Promising Young Woman, I liked.
Okay.
And that's another one that just came out several months ago. And I thought that was an interesting movie. It's funny. I don't watch a ton of. I watch so many old. Like last night, I was watching Dirty Harry movies, and I watch Charles Bronson films all the time. I'm so into those 70 like vigilante and dirty cop films.
Yeah.
So I can recommend something coming out in a couple weeks in theaters, and that's called Nobody.
Nobody?
And Nobody is with Bob Odenkirk.
I love him.
From Better Call Saul.
Mm-hmm.
And watch the trailer and tell me you don't want to go see this movie. An unbelievable trailer and premise. You've never seen him in a role like this. Just watch the trailer to Nobody. It comes out, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks in theaters, and it'll probably stream, not soon after. But this looks like one of the most. This movie looks unbelievable.
Well, you have never steered us wrong.
No, we should have you back before the Academy Awards.
It's funny. I usually see everything. This was 1 year. I just wasn't. I haven't even seen Nomadland yet.
I haven't seen that either.
We started to watch
it.
That people have been talking about.
Yeah. And Sound of Metal was pretty amazing. If you haven't seen that, gripping and beautiful story. There's just a moment for me at the very end that I just go, oh, wow. It was a great movie. Sound of Metal. That's on Amazon, I believe.
Anyway, we should.
And I'll throw one more quick one out.
Please.
It's called Class Action Park.
Class Action Park?
Class Action Park is on, I believe, on HBO Max about the amusement park in New Jersey. The water slide park where all the kids were getting maimed, were dying or getting hurt.
I remember you
somebody made a documentary about it.
It is so amazing. The place was called Action Park, and it was this water slide park, and they had bumper cars, and they had go-karts, but everything was so dangerous that every kid was getting hurt, and they have the footage of all these rides that were so unsafe and so dangerous, and all the footage is in this documentary. It's called Class Action Park.
Wow.
How did they get footage of the accident?
There was so much home footage. The guy who ran it was really like a P.T. Barnum type, and started dummy insurance companies so he couldn't be sued. It really goes deep into the insurance scams and what they did to cover up the deaths and the kids getting hurt. But there's footage of every ride and stories of everyone who got hurt there, and it's fascinating that this
Class
place
Action Park. Well, Danny,
Class Action Park.
Thank you for all of your knowledge. And we want to let our audience know that you were the super fan last week for our interview with the creative director of Buzzer, because you love game shows. And we play a game show here on Cooking with Debi and Friends. So would you like to play our little game show?
Of course.
Okay.
Okay. Here, we'll do the intro and then we'll bring it.
Okay. We're going to do the intro. The game is... You ready, Danny?
All right.
Yep.
Debi,
Okay. What?
I'm going to give you the colander of questions.
Yay! Okay. Would you rather and why, Danny?
Okay.
Would you rather and why? Would you rather live in a different fancy hotel every night with unlimited room service, credit, or live in your dream home but not be able to hire any help?
Oh, live in my dream home. I've been living alone almost my whole life. I've been on my own. So I would take the house and fend for myself and do what I've always done.
And get his own pizza.
That makes sense.
I'll get my own pizza. I don't need that. I take the house by myself than the fancy hotel with the service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a good one for you, Danny, because you're so good at both. Would you rather let your partner choose every movie you watch or pick every restaurant you eat at? Oh, that's a good Danny question.
Pick every restaurant.
Oh!
I can't have someone... Well, I love both, but I can't have someone tell me I can't watch Death Wish 5 if I'm in the mood for watching it one night. That's never going to fly. Or Vice Squad or Sharky's Machine or any of these great 70s or 80s films I watch all the time. So I'm okay with someone picking the restaurant. You can always find something on a menu you'd like.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And
you can't always have Death Wish 5 when you want to see it.
True that.
That's right.
And then I have a COVID question. If you could choose anybody to quarantine with, 2 people, living or dead, who would you have quarantined with this past year?
Charles Bronson, 100%. I never got to meet him, but I'm still a mega fan of Charles Bronson. And LaWanda Page on Esther from Sanford and Son.
Oh,
Interesting.
Who I'm a massive, massive, massive fan of, and I still watch Sanford and Sons all the time. And I regret so much I was never able to meet her. So it would be LaWanda Page and Charles Bronson.
Those are
very
yeah,
unique
very
and
good.
interesting. Danny, you're so interesting. I love Danny.
I love
that.
Charles Bronson too, not just because of the Death Wish, but the first time I saw him was in Once Upon a Time in the West. Fantastic movie. I'm really into westerns and old movies too, but I haven't seen a Death Wish in a while. I might need to put that on the calendar, on the queue.
I got to tell you, all 5 Death Wishes are great. The 3rd one with Martin Balsam they're so underrated. The 5th one with Michael Parks, who I mentioned was in Tusk. Death Wish 5, Face of Death, is a great movie. These were when he was doing the Cannon movies and the Golan and Globus movies. You know, in the 80s, Bronson was doing a movie every year. But they're great films, though. I mean, he did a movie called Kinjite that's great. 10 Till Midnight is great. I can go on and on with these movies he was making in the early 80s. The Mechanic is a great movie.
Dirty Dozen, somebody said.
Of course, the Dirty Dozen.
You know what's...
Yeah, I mean, Hard Times. I mean, you can go on. Bronson's IMDb is incredible.
You know what's interesting, Danny? I know we're trying to wrap up here, but you know what's interesting in this conversation has come full circle for me is I remember the first nude scene I saw in a movie, and it was a Charles Bronson movie, and it was a horrible rape scene, which I think of his housekeeper, and then he goes out and he, seeks revenge. But I remember that scene just staying with me because I had never seen anybody naked on screen, and then it was such a shocking scene.
Well, I will leave you with one bit of trivia then. That scene would have been at the beginning of Death Wish 1,
yes,
and one of the 2 rapists was Jeff Goldblum.
No.
Yes.
How do you know everything?
One of the 2 rapists at the beginning of the movie of Death was Jeff Goldblum.
He's an encyclopedia.
He's a walking encyclopedia. Yeah, I remember that movie. It just really changed me. I remember coming home and telling my mom, I saw somebody naked for the first time on screen, and then she was raped, and she was Latina. So there was just so much in that one scene that just was so incredibly, it's so odd that we're talking about nudity in film. And I remember that scene like it was yesterday, but it was necessary. It was necessary to shock the audience, to tell this story so that you could be on Charles Bronson's side to go and get that revenge. It had to be a scene that showed so graphically how this woman was raped and murdered. On that positive note,
with nudity, it's sometimes it's necessary if it's intrinsic to the plot of the movie or it's important, you have to put it in there. Otherwise, it's a disservice to the film.
Right.
Yep.
Whether
you're
it's
not going to be doing the movie Showgirls while they're wearing tuxedos.
Exactly.
If you're doing a movie Showgirls, they're going to be, for the most part, naked.
Right. What was the they said in his documentary, like if you're making a movie about construction workers, they're going to have hard hats.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And we'd love to have you back before Academy Awards, or if you're ever thinking about a good movie suggestion, send it to us and we'll put it up on our podcast or our cooking show, because people are always looking for recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been nice. And one thing, I will say during, while we've been at home a lot more in the last year is people's got to binge watch and find old movies they haven't seen. And, thank God for Amazon Prime and Hulu and Netflix and HBO Max and some of the others that Turner Classic Movies that have these amazing libraries that if you're bored one night, you can go find a great movie, a Clint Eastwood movie from the 70s or a Bronson film or something cool from those decades that they're out there. And you can watch them every night. And that's one thing I've got to see a lot of films I haven't seen in years, and it's been great.
Yeah, same for us.
Yeah.
But if you're bored tonight, as Danny said earlier, you have to watch I Care a Lot on Netflix.
Powerful.
Yeah. Very, very, very
unique.
Powerful. Movie. Danny, thank you so much, man. Can't tell you how much we appreciate this. Danny Wolf, writer, producer, director. He has Skin, A History of Nudity, movies on Hulu and Amazon. I'm going to throw up this graphic too, so those watching can see it again. And then I also want to put up this graphic so that they can see the Time Warp series. Amazing stuff. You're a wealth of knowledge and a really great friend. We appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you both. I had a great time, and I'll be talking to you tomorrow night.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, man.
All right.
Take care,
you.
Danny.
Good night, Danny.
Okay, guys. So
he knows everything.
He does, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. And I tell you, every time I talk to that guy, I learn something more, not just about him, but about movies, about skating. Amazing. I started skating again. I think most of you guys know that. But this guy was an announcer for roller derby for years, and he's really working hard to do that. I don't know where he gets all the time.
I don't either.
To do everything he does.
He's not married.
That's true. Yeah.
He calls all the shots.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, just to recap, we are cooking live on the same channels, Facebook and YouTube, on Sundays at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time.
And this Sunday is going to be the anniversary of COVID. And we're going to ask you 3 questions about COVID. What was the best part? What was the worst part? And what did you learn? Those are 3 questions we used to ask our kids when they got home from school. What was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? And what did you learn? And so that's what we're going to talk about with COVID. It's also Pie Day Sunday. So we're going to make a shepherd's pie. And it's the anniversary of COVID. And we can't let it go without putting a mark in there. And you tell us something bad that happened, we'll be there with you in that space. You tell us something good that happened and we will celebrate with you. And you tell us something that you've learned so that we can share.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's been quite a bit since, and wow, it's hard to believe it's been a year so fast.
Yeah.
Although it seems that sometimes so very long.
It does. We should let these good people go. They've been hanging on for
I'm
quite
going to close this up here. You guys, we're at cookingwithdebbieandfriends.com, on Instagram at Cooking with Debbie, YouTube and Facebook. And then, of course, we take the audio after the show. We put it up on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Before you turn your computers off and go to bed or shut the TVs off or whatever you're going to do tonight, please go and queue up this movie, Skin, A History of Nudity in the Movies.
On Hulu.
Queue up Time Warp Part 1, 2, and 3. You will not regret it. Danny Wolf is an amazing friend, and you will love the work that he does. Just to say goodbye to a few people here, those of you that hung out with us for a while.
Mike Bilberry, Tony Townsend. Yeah, he was entertained, Tony. Good night, Anna Maria. Suzanne made a comment that Jack was really enjoying this interview because it reminded him of being back in film school.
Yeah. And Sally Cleaver came in a little bit late.
So good to see you here.
We're glad you did.
And Dan and Mike always adding
the Eaglesons, Linda, Kathy Holmes, by the way, she said, love your blouse. I love it too. It looks really pretty. I think was Pilar's, or she had one like it.
I wanted to do this interview nude. Just wear towels, and he didn't want to do it.
I wouldn't let her. I said, no, that's not going to happen. Tom Salazar was with us, and a number of other people. If you're still here, I see on the upper left that there are a number of you guys still here. My Uncle Joe, love you too. And for all of you that watched tonight and hung out with us, we hope that you enjoyed Danny Wolf, and we hope that you will support him and his work. So with that,
good night.
Good night.